So hi everyone. Wow, we've got a great crowd tonight. Um, so glad to see actually some familiar faces and some new names as well. We're just going to give maybe another minute for folks to join us, but in the interim, if folks aren't shy, if they want to come off camera, off mute, or put it in the chat, I'd love to hear how people heard about the talk and where you're joining us from. So I'm coming to you from Pearl Harbor. That is where the park's office is. The park doesn't have any facilities on site. We don't have offices. There's no bathrooms. There's no structures. So I'm co-located with my fellow national park on Oahu, Pearl Harbor National Memorial, and coming to you from Pearl Harbor. Ooh, Honouliuli Instagram. Oh, that's great. Oh, Oh, New Orleans. Yes. So Suzanne, I hope I'm not embarrassing you, but she is the editor of the Breaking the Silence book. That is the seminal book for the park, and actually also talks about all the POWs that were held here. And she has since retired and is in New Orleans. So great to have you, Suzanne. Once we're done with the Q&A, do you have anything to add? We'd love to hear from you and the research that you did on the work for the part too. Oh, hola Eva. Great. Well, I appreciate everybody not being shy and sharing where you're from or how you heard about the talk. I definitely want to start so we can give as much time as possible to our great speakers tonight. I'm really looking forward to hearing what they say as part of the work that we're funding. So it's exciting to hear the latest and greatest, and I get to hear it all along with you all. So very excited about that. So we are joined tonight by Mary Kuniyu Danico, is the director of the Center for Oral History and professor of ethnic studies at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. The center has completed its administrative oral history project on Honouliuli in 2025, and she's currently exploring the life experiences of Korean conscripted laborers who were brought to Honouliuli as prisoners of war between 1943 and 1945. And joining her tonight is Ducky Lee Murabayashi, who's the president of the Korean Immigration Research Institute in Hawaii and also associate member at the Center for Korean Studies. Murabayashi is a leading scholar on the history of Koreans in Hawaii. So as you can see, we have some really great speakers tonight who's going to share a lot of great information and research, and I really look forward to hearing from them and learning alongside with you all today. So with that, I will hand it over to Mary and Ducky.
Aloha, everyone.
안녕하세요.
It's so great to see familiar faces and new faces, and we're excited to share some of the work that we've been doing. I have been so honored to know Ducky for almost over 30 years now. Met her first when I was a grad student, and then first whatever she has a memory.
telling her ages.
She has a memory of an elephant. Like she remembered my name. So we're going to share a little bit about the work that the center is doing, and then how Ducky has been involved, and such a important person to be a part of this. So I'm going to share my screen. So bear with me 1 second. All right. So when I was thinking about the title for the talk, and I've shared this with Christine, and first of all, thanks so much for the national parks for including us in the 10-year anniversary celebration of Honouliuli. It's been really wonderful working with Christine and her team at MPS, and so we're really excited that our work is going to continue doing more than what we've done so far. So this is just kind of the beginning. So it's really about unpacking the layer history of the Korean prisoners of war at Honouliuli and looking at 1943 to 1945. And so as Christine already mentioned, I'm here with Ducky Lee Murabayashi. And you'll see us kind of bantering because we're very comfortable with each other, and so don't mind us. We sometimes joke around a bit. So for many of you who are familiar with Hawaii's history, we just wanted to provide some context. So since, 1903, the Korean immigration started officially since 1903. So this year we celebrate 122 years of Korean immigration to Hawaii. And, it's so important that archives are examined and explored and collections are preserved. And the oral history that we're doing with the national park is one aspect of those archives, is that we're hoping that the oral histories of descendants that we are conducting will be part of this larger archive that's already been, that's been built on, including the work of Professor Falgout and other folks who have been doing seminal work around Honouliuli. And so, Ducky, I think for those of you who don't know, and I personally did not know this, I call her now the godmother of Korean history in Hawaii. She is a Korean immigration historian expert. She is an urban planner. She's part of the United Methodist Church archive. Oh my gosh, her house is an archival library. It's incredible. And you'll see here is something that when we met up in 2023 at the 120-year anniversary, up in the picture on the very top corner, you'll see Ducky, a freshly graduated student from UC Berkeley up there. And in 1990, no, in the 90-year anniversary, 90-year celebration of Korean history, Ducky led the charge to ensure that the story of Koreans in Hawaii were told in preparation for the 100-year anniversary. And so I wanted Ducky to kind of talk a little bit about her efforts. And the reason why is it's important to understand why she's part of this conversation together, because without her, it would have been very challenging for us to find the descendants, and you'll soon find out why that is. So can you share a little bit about the efforts?
When we prepared for the 90th anniversary, one of the reasons was if we don't do a 90th, we won't be able to celebrate the centennial. So we started 90th. One of the major project, the product of the 90th anniversary is producing this pictorial history of Korean immigration to Hawaii. And that sort of led all the story coming out from many family members like that. And although there are a lot of, some mistakes in the captions, that's a 30 years ago book, but still this is really the basic pictorial historical book.
And it's such an important archival material for a lot of us who are doing research right now to kind of trace back. It's pretty incredible the kind of information you can gather from photos. And so we'll talk a little bit more about how we've utilized some photos to get more information to do the oral histories that we're currently doing. Long before the work on Hono and, the work that Ducky has done in Hawaii, Koreans in Hawaii have been fighting for Korean independence. And I know this is not the ideal photo, but can you share a little bit about how Koreans have been connected to Korea and the relationship there?
When Korean immigration actually stopped in the summer of 1905, right there, Japan Korea became a protectorate of Japanese government. And 5 years later, it was absorbed actually, so became a colony of Japan. So the people who came here was no mother country to return to. So here they sort of not only established the Korean community, it actually became a Korea itself over here. And that's how they led their life. Fully sacrificing to rebuild new nation in their mother country. And that's how, so the activity and women's organization, everybody actually sacrificed to establish a new country.
And it's an interesting point too, because at that time under Japanese occupation and colonization, Koreans here did not have the same home that they left, right? Because it's been occupied by Japan. And it's important to note that because the POWs that we will be talking about later were conscripted laborers under Japanese occupation. And so it provides some context to what was happening here in Hawaii, but also what was happening in Korea. So I bring up a lot of these photos, and when I was going over it with Ducky, she's like, "Why are you bringing up all these photos?" And I think it's really important to share um, the investment that she has had with the community. I think it's very different from so many other research about the everyday experiences of Koreans living in Hawaii. And you will learn shortly that with the Korean POWs at Honouliuli, it was not an isolated, insulated experience, but it was interactional with key people in Hawaii, especially Koreans in Hawaii, especially those who are part of the Methodist Church. And so I wanted to kind of showcase that Ducky's commitment to preserving Korea history started a long time ago. And yeah, she's always like, whatever, like, why do you do that? But it did. And this is, I know Mariko is online and I know she's in Haleiwa, but she actually took me to the cemetery a couple of weeks ago. So thank you, Mariko, for taking me to that. And Ducky was one of the ones that erected that monument. So we all know what happened at Pearl Harbor. And during that time, Hawaii was not yet a state. And we know on the continent that there were racist propaganda and policies actually that instructed the forcible incarceration of Japanese in detainment camps or incarceration camp. In Hawaii, because we're a territory, we were under martial law, and it was declared after so many, hundreds of people who were killed at Pearl Harbor. One of the really interesting thing of the research at Honouliuli, as we talked about Suzanne Falgood, whose kind of seminal work has inspired many, including us here at the center, but we also wanted to recognize the work of archaeologists from West Oahu who were instrumental in starting and planting the seed with JCCH. I think JCCH involvement and leadership in establishing Honouliuli as a national park cannot be understated, because I think it was really important. And if some of you have the opportunity to go to the MPS site, please look at the oral history that we did finish on that particular project. Just some, archival photos that of, aside from Honouliuli, and this is, Ducky and I've been talking about this with the data. It is really unclear among the 2,700 folks how many of them were actually at Hono and how many of them may have been at Sand Island. So we're still digging through archives to kind of look at exactly where they were. But you can see in this map on Sand Island, you'll see a Korean POW camp on the left side, and on the right bottom, you'll see an Italian POW camp, because there were Okinawans, Italians, Germans. There were also Filipinos and some Tunisians. But majority of the people were Korean and Okinawan. So this was one of the, I guess, the headquarters for where they were doing some processing during that time. So I wanted to ask Ducky about this note that she got. She got it in the mail, and this is really important for our research. Can you tell everyone about this letter you got?
2001, Mr. Kim from Jeju newspaper, he was the editor of it. He sent me a copy of a newspaper copy. And it says, "Hey, I found this newspaper article, and there was the Jeju person, Mr. Han, was part of the POW, Korean POW state in Hawaii. And he has a list of 2,700. Wow. So that was it. But that was 2001. And I was more concentrated on Korean in Hawaii rather than Korean coming from outside. Then it slowly, dive into the whole, trying to find out interrelationship with the existing Korean community in Honolulu and the POW in Honouliuli.
So Honouliuli, the historical site, this is a monument that's not at the park, but right outside. Ducky was invited to join the advisory committee in 2013. The launch was actually in 2012, but later on she was invited to be a part of it. And can you share a little bit about what you learned at that time?
The JCCH, Japanese Cultural Center, was sort of heading this movement to make this site a national history. But that time, they didn't even know there was a POWs, not only Korean, but Okinawans and other ethnic groups. So when I was joined this, they start learning that there was other element, other than the Japanese civilian internees over there. So we worked together, and we'll start preparing when it become a national park. Let's talk about how we're gonna to the visitor center, and we were dreaming actually. It's been 10 years.
We keep the hope up. I mean, one of the things too is, several reports have talked about Honouliuli as Jigoku Dani.
That's a hell.
Yeah.
The Hell Valley.
Because it was so hot.
It was hot. For Japanese civilian internees, it was a Hell Valley. But those captured in the Pacific islands and brought here, particularly Korean POWs, it was a heaven. I mean, it was a paradise because they worked hard in the Pacific Islands, paving the airfield and all that. And I don't think they even had enough food to eat, but they were brought here, and they were housed in a tent, and they had enough food to eat according to the international law. The prisoner has to be treated equally. So they had a different experience, and their experience is again different from others captured and sent to some other places.
Other camps.
So we concentrate on what they did over here.
Yeah, so one of the things that I learned when I first came in 2023 and took on the position as director, MPS was kind enough to invite me and kind of tour and hike along what was Honouliuli and what is there at the park. And when I learned about that there were 2,700 Korean POWs, I'm like, wow, this is a really interesting story. And so thankfully, MPS agreed. And so we were able to get a grant to do this. I initially thought, this is so messed up. The Koreans were colonized by Japan. They were conscripted laborers. And then, then they get caught as POWs. Oh my God, that's so unfair.
And they were put it in the same place where the Japanese civilian, internees there.
Yeah. But what we learned actually through archival research is that for many of these POWs who are in places like in the Micronesia or Saipan or Tianan, that majority of them died from malnutrition because they didn't have enough to eat. And so when they were brought here, they ate, they were able to take showers. So, and compared to being brutalized, for some that, they felt that it was more like quote unquote heaven. I still feel like it was pretty horrible, but, I guess it's all relative during that time too. And, the prisoners of war's condition, really varied. As Ducky mentioned, initially they were put in with other Japanese POWs, and there were incidents reported from Korean scholars that showed that there was lots of fights in the beginning, and the military put them all together, not realizing that Koreans were not Japanese, the Okinawans were not Japanese. And there were some Korean scholars who mentioned that the Okinawans and Koreans were okay with each other, but neither one of them were okay with the Japanese. I wanted Ducky to kind of talk a little bit about the 3 college students who came in toward the end of the war. Can you share a little bit about this?
Actually, Korean prisoners start arriving Honolulu December of 1943. And initially they were housed in the Sand Island, and later on moved to the Honouliuli. And toward the end of their stay, October 1945, these 3 college graduates were brought to the POW's camp. And actually they were military personnel, not like the other laborers. These people were captured as a POW, and since they are sort of a high intellectual level, they were part of they were trained to be the special project. NEPCO project is so-called the spy project, to land in Korea toward the end of, but before the project actually started, the war ended. So 3 people didn't know where to go. Military didn't know where to put. So they put them to the POW. So they were sent to Hawaii. And according to them, they were it's a sort of a sad experience, but the uh, the
Colonel Howell.
realized, the Colonel Howard realized that their sort of intellectual level as well as their leadership, they put these 3 people to be in charge of publishing the news weekly paper. So they ended up here in October 1945, where they published the weekly paper, about 7 issues, and then all of them went back to Korea. So while they were in the prison camp, POW camp, they published the Free Korea and 7 issues. Toward the end of that, and they realized that they were all going back to Korea, these people be the leader, says, hey, let's make a list. Actually, so that's how we have a 2,700 people who stayed in Hawaii by their residence. So 13 province like that. And
16 of them were in Jeju.
Yeah, Jeju, and the interesting, when you look at their handwriting, it's one person did it. So it seems like everybody put it in their card, and the one person actually sort of,
Who had really good penmanship, most likely, right?
That's right.
Yeah. You want to talk a little bit about Dr. Che, who's passed away last year, who was doing the research on the 3.
Actually, this Honouliuli, the national monument movement was on. There were 2 scholars. One is in Korea, Dr. Kim Do-hyung. He wrote the general story of a POW in Honouliuli. So he covered all where they're from, how they did and all that. And Professor Young-ho Choi over here in UAH was more interested in this 3 editor. So although he covered the activities of their lives in Honouliuli, but he concentrated on how these 3 editors were captured, and they trained and for other projects and brought it over here. So those 2 scholars actually started this project. And then later on, Korean government, when they did the project of gathering all the information of the forced laborers, drafted some other areas, they covered this 2,700 people also.
And Ducky mentioned Colonel Howell, who was empathetic to the 3 college students and recognized their intelligence and their very pro-democracy initiatives. While we haven't been able to find the descendants of the 3 college students, we actually, at the center's team, with our awesome grad student, Madeline, we were able to find the son of Colonel Howell. And so we're planning on meeting with him next month in Atlanta, so to have some conversations. And he's been very generous with his time and sharing some knowledge with us. So we're kind of really excited about that, because that was a really great find. And, not to sound morbid, the way we found them, we had to be very creative. And so when we were coming into a lot of, roadblocks and finding descendants, I asked Madeline to look at obituaries, and we were able to find his son. We also found the warden's grandson. And so we're hoping to get in touch with the Honouliuli warden's grandson. One of the things that I did want to mention is that we did find some of our Korean descendants. So Mr. Han, who Ducky got the letter from her friend about this POW, who said he had the list of the volume 7 with the names of 2,700 POWs of Korean descent. That's him on the left, and on your right is his son. And so we're not showing his face because we don't really show our narrator's face until they approve it. But I did take one photo where his face is not shown. And so he is showing us the same volume 7 that his dad is holding there on the left, and which was really great. And so we were able to, Ducky and I met with him in November of 2024, and then I interviewed him in April of 2025, where he was very kind and gracious and spent several hours with us, sharing his memories of his father and his memories of what he recalled during that time. His sister, who is older, who lives in Busan, we also interviewed her, and she actually had very clear memories about her father, especially being reunited with him, even though she was only 4 or 5 years old. So it's pretty cool to meet a lot of these folks who provide context about what's happened.
Actually, from her experience, we learned that U.S. military provided the winter clothes when 2,600 were returned in the end of December 1945.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we didn't think of those things, but this daughter remembered that her father brought the 4 hats. I said, how can, our first reaction was, how can they bring from Hawaii, coming from Hawaii, how can he bring a fur hat? But later we found that the military provided the winter clothes for them.
Yeah. So and I think I asked where that hat was, because I was hoping that we can add to some of the collections for Honouliuli, but they said that the father had given it to an uncle and that they didn't really know
older brother.
Yeah. So they didn't really know what happened to it. But yeah, this was really, really cool to meet with him.
But my sort of interest, this POW was, I wanted to find out the interaction between the Korean community in Honolulu, Oahu, and this POW. And actually, I received this information, the Jeju people on POW in Honouliuli. I put that aside, and when I was doing the research in our church history, Sunday Bulletin has several issues, has a story on the POW. So the story got jive together. And as I said, the Korean POW start arriving here December 1943, and 1944 already our church Sunday Bulletin is trying to collect some extra musical instrument to give to these POWs. They trying to do some programs for these POWs. And I found that the minister, Reverend Lim, taught them English, Honouliuli, as well as the Sand Island. And other ministers, Wahua the present Olive Church ministers, Reverend An did also. And the young people, the first generation young people, like 25, and actually taught them English in the class.
Yeah.
At the end of 1945, before they left, actually, when they did this repatriated to Korea, end of 1945, there were about 462 people accepted the Christianity, the Christian faith, before they left, went back to Korea. So this kind of is very interesting. And I'm personally trying to find the descendants who, whose father started going to church after he returned from Hawaii. So we have yet to find some descendants like that.
And we have to really thank the United Methodist Church, the Korean Methodist Church, for giving us access to really an abundance of incredible archival, meticulous. Their bookkeeper was amazing in terms of documenting everything. And so, our team has really
collected a special collections to help this Christmas present, and
who went where, what time they went. So yeah, right. Really. And so thank you so much, Ducky, for letting us have access to a lot of those archives that's kind of filling in a lot of the pukas or the holes and history that people don't really know about. And I think too is that what's really fascinating about the story is, Ducky mentioned earlier Kim Do-young, Professor Kim Do-young, who I have to thank our friend Sunny Kim, who is here, I think, still, and he's at the National Institute for Korean History. He was so amazing. He is amazing in really introducing me and meeting and connecting me to some incredible folks in Korea. And so I had the honor of interviewing Professor Kim and shared a lot of his publications that are written in Korea. Korea's archives actually have an abundance of research. Sadly, you just can't get it from here. You have to be there to retrieve a lot of the research, but there has been an investment. But still, people in Korea also did not know about the Korean POWs. So when I reached out to Ducky in 2024, after National Park said, yes, let's do this, she was the first person I thought of to reach out to, largely because we have this long history. She's the godmother of Korean history in Hawaii. And I thought if anyone would know or would know of people who would know, it would be her. And so she and Nichols came to the center and we talked. And of course, she knew people because we were able to talk to folks on Jeju. She's done extensive research and community building in Jeju as an urban planner, was doing so much work with the city of Jeju around tourism, actually, and, infrastructure and sustainability. And so she knew a lot of the academics and oral historians and public figures. And so she just reached out to them, and said, hey, there's a professor that wants to do oral histories. And immediately we were able to locate 4 descendants. 3 of them turned to be very viable. The 4th person was also really wonderful, but they didn't really want to talk too much about it. It might be still painful. So we decided not to pursue them. But we did do pre-interviews with all of them and finished 2 interviews with the other 2 children. But I bring up Professor Kim Do-hyun because he actually got to interview a POW himself. So Mr. Kim Hanok was one that shared a lot of different memories that's also included in the book by Professor Kim. And so if you're interested, all of the literature and books will be included at Honouliuli as well as the Center for Oral History. We're trying to get some of the articles translated because, as Ducky pointed out, the reason why she Romanized the names of the 2700 is that if there ever was a visitor center, a lot of folks can't read that kind of Korean because it's more Chinese characters. So I can barely read Korean, let alone Chinese characters. So it's really wonderful that that's available. We also feel that this collaboration exchange with Korea is really important. So we're hoping that in the future we'll be able to translate what we're doing in Korean, and we're hoping to translate what's written in Korea into English.
It's a sort of a tail end story is that after Jeju TV station covered the Jeju people that we interviewing in POWs, and other cities, becoming interested in what about from our town? Who were captured and sort of thing. So there's a competition will be going on, and I found out about 6 people from Incheon.
It was called something else before.
Yeah, the POW. So people in Incheon, interesting, find the descendants of the those people too. So,
and there is an immigration museum in Incheon, Korea, really well done, a beautiful museum that has a section about Koreans in Hawaii there, as well as Koreans in Mexico, Koreans in Latin America. So it's really Koreans in the diaspora. And so I'm hoping that they'll be able to also have a section on the Korean POWs in Hawaii as well. But yeah, I think even on Jeju with some of the broadcaster and the oral historians, they themselves did not really know about it. And culturally during that period, people didn't really speak about things that happened during Japanese occupation. So it's really complicated and it's really layered, and we have to really scaffold and unscaffold, the stories. There is one really awesome story that we're hoping to actually get in taped because we got her pre-interview. of her father, who ended up going to Japan after he returned. And so I'll just put one word out there, pachinko. And so, you know, we're hoping to be able to share that story with you in the very near future. Um, on Jeju Island, what was really wonderful after I met with the Han descendant is that there is a great memorial devoted to those who passed during that period of Japanese occupation of conscripted laborers who were in the Pacific. And so we were able to locate Mr. Han, that's a small box on the bottom, name along the wall. And so the family told us where it was. It's in a really beautiful temple. And if you go walk through the temple in Jeju, in the very bottom, there's a memorial devoted to this the group of people who passed away. You know, they passed away on Jeju. It wasn't that they passed away across. Some of them did, but many of them passed away after they returned. And Mr. Han lived a long life, you know, afterwards. So, you know, he was still pretty much thriving in Jeju Island. And this is the documentary that Ducky was referring to, that, you know, we owe a great deal of gratitude and thanks to the reporters and the oral historian and your friend who is a water scientist, environmental scientist, Mr. Go, Dr. Go, who were instrumental in introducing us to a lot of folks. There is a link on the bottom that you can click to. He won several awards for this documentary. His focus was partly on Honouliuli in Hawaii, but really about what happened in Tiananmen and Saipan. But I think it's important to offer that context to understand where did these people come from and then what happened to them after they returned. They, you know, as I mentioned in a very short video that our other awesome grad student, Amber, made, about the work that we're doing, is that these were real people with real lives, with families. They were people who had lives after they left. And what was interesting, what we learned when we were interviewing some of the descendants, is that the fathers were multilingual. And so it is curious to see, did they learn how to speak English at the, you know, at Hono through the churches, with the Red Cross or with the fraternities, with the Olive Methodist Church? Or, you know, or many of them spoke multiple languages. So not just English, but some of them spoke Chinese, some of them spoke Spanish, because these folks were Christian laborers all across. So we still don't know. We would love to know where they came from. But we do know in terms of Korea, where their homeland is. And so that is listed on the directory. Oh, there's a thumb up. So is that me? Is Ducky? Oh, that's so cool. When we do this, it does that. Oh, wow. That's awesome. Wow. So we really wanted to thank, before we take some questions, we wanted to make sure we have some time for questions, is that we really want.
This is just one first step.
Yeah. Yeah, this is really the beginning. And that's what we're saying is the layered history. I'm so grateful to MPS because now we are going to be focusing on Koreans in Hawaii. That the reason that we started to look at them was because it was part of the story. That was in the archives. We couldn't ignore it. So we're really going to start to look at those who are part of the Honouliuli story, Koreans in Hawaii. We're also looking at U.S. military and their role, and all descendants of Honouliuli as well, because I think the story of Hono is beyond one community, one group. Even among the Korean POWs, they were not a uniform, one-dimensional group. They're very diverse. You know, many of them were from Jeollado, actually, where my family is from. And so when I went to Jeollado and I had asked, no one really knew. And again, it has a little bit cultural. A lot of folks don't talk about the past and part of the history. And Japanese occupation in Korea is a very hurtful period. And so some people don't necessarily want to tell their children that. One interesting thing that Ducky and I found out is that these fathers told their daughters or their daughter-in-laws way more than they told their sons. And so even when we were doing the pre-interview, Ducky went with me for the pre-interview.
History keepers or women, the history keepers.
Yeah. But even with the journalists, some of them were saying, oh, I don't think if the narrator is going to talk too much, you know, I don't think they're going to share that much. And the one who shared the most was the one that they said wouldn't really share that much. And that was Mr. Han's son, you know, the one that we were able to picture. And and then I think they were saying it's because you're both women. Maybe. Oh, maybe we're just really good oral historians. I do want to also really thank, the researchers, journalists, and historians, Professor Kim Do-hyun, Kim Do-eun, Sunny Kim from National Institute for Korean History, Professor is he Professor Gogi-won? Now,
He
yeah.
teaches at Jeju University.
Yeah. So Professor Gogi-won, Yoon and Soo, and then awesome graduate students. We have one graduate student from Yonsei University who was helping me with the Korea portion, Sua Choi, who's currently at fellowship at UCLA, Amber McClure, our PhD student in American Study, and Malin Nigaman, who is in Master's in Library Sciences, who are the two that have been instrumental in helping us dig through all of the research and the archival work. I also want to thank, I don't even know if they're on, but I just think it goes without saying, all the administrative support that we get here, the invisible labor that folks allow me to travel to Korea and all the paperwork. I wanted to thank them. And finally, and most importantly, the National Park Services for entrusting us with doing this work. And, Christine Ogura, thank you so much for your leadership and your trust in us and being incredible partners. And Jay, who was here and now I think in Southern North Carolina. And I wanted to also thank Mikhail Fox, who was an archivist at Pearl Museum, who also was one of the first to provide access for us and give us information about what was available through the military lens. So yeah, I just wanted to now open it up for questions if you have any, or just talk story. So I'm going to go ahead and end my slide if that's okay. Is that good? All right.
Yeah, that's great. And I think we might have somebody who might need to be. Oh, sorry. So I was somebody did correct the video link in the chat. So
Okay.
I'm sorry, the video was running as I was talking. If
Okay.
people heard that in the background. So thanks for putting in the correct link that will show the video that you were showing in your presentation for
Thank
the
you.
folks about Jeju. So yeah, I think yeah, we've got a lot of great people still on the call. Actually, a really good group of folks on Tuesday evening, no less, and for some very late from Utah and New Orleans. So thanks for continuing to hang in there. And so yeah, I think definitely, as Mary said, please feel free to ask questions. You can put it in the chat, or I'm not sure if we
We'd
can
love to see
unmute.
you too, if you want to put your cameras on. We'd love to see who's
Yeah,
there,
yeah,
and some familiar faces. That would be awesome.
yeah.
And I think we're
I mean,
also living somewhere too. So if it's on Facebook.
yeah, multi avenues. And I will also I neglected to mention when I started that these virtual talks are made possible through the park's nonprofit partner, Pacific Historic Parks. So Mary talked about the behind the scenes of people that make this happen. So Wes Saito is behind the scenes, ensuring that we are having a good experience and conversation. So if folks do want to ask any questions, either the chat or I think he can unmute you as well, let us know.
Actually, I think Mariko has her video on. I don't know if Mariko
Yeah.
wanted to say anything. No, no, she's shaking her head.
Why do I want to say anything? I just love this lady. Thank you so much, Ducky, for everything that you've done. And Suzanne Fagu, we miss you here in Hawaii. But thank you, Ducky. Thank you, Mary.
That's great. Yeah, Mariko is a wealth. She's a vessel of knowledge herself. I love talking story with her because every time I'm with her, I learn so much. And I think that's the beauty of oral history is that, when we're interviewing folks who have relations with Honouliuli, descendants hold incredible amounts of knowledge. And for some even who may not remember, they also hold vessels and artifacts and pictures and photos. And so if any of you have relations with Honolulu. This is an ongoing project. We just got an extension and
it's
not
not only
over.
the POW.
Right. Yeah. Korean community, military. So if you know of people, please reach out to me, myu@hawaii.edu. Very easy. they kept my email from grad school. So it's like very easy. So I know some people think I got divorced or something, but no, it's just my grad school one, nyu@hawaii.edu. And we welcome community input and collaboration because many of you probably know far more than we do in terms of the folks who are involved. I'm lucky to have Ducky in my life, and I'm so thankful that she said yes when I asked her if she would be, willing to support me in this effort. And she's always told me, I've done my part. Someone needs to do the next stage. And so I felt like inadvertently, she was kind of like telling me, you need to take on this story. So I'm so glad that Christine and the parks allowed me this opportunity to be a part of the Koreans in Hawaii story, which is really important.
Yeah, and we are grateful for the partnership as well. So you do have some questions in the chat. I'm curious how the lives were in Honouliuli. You did mention that they lived better than before, but were there any kind of forced labor?
Not that was documented. There was paid labor though. So they did get paid according to the archival stuff that we dug up, ranging anywhere from 85 cents to $1. And so we're still checking and verifying the areas, but one POW mentioned that they were shoveling sand in Waikiki. Others talked about working in different gardens. My research team actually found a ledger from the military that kind of documented the areas that they ended up working in. And so we're still kind of digging through that and looking at it. So yes, they worked, but it was not necessarily forced.
Actually, one person server left a record that he volunteered to work all this area because he wanted to see the whole island. So he went around, different work sites.
Yeah.
And plus he earned the money too. And
there's a small group of Korean POWs who were paid, but they ended up donating the money to the Red Cross. So not all of them did that,
right.
but there were some of them that felt very grateful for, how well they were treated. And so I can't say all of them felt that way, but there was a number of folks who ended up donating their money. I think it was like $600 or something like that, which is quite a bit, during that time, considering they only got paid $1 a day. But they were able to donate that back.
And they one time they had a soccer game and they won. They defeated the Italian POW team.
My wife has I don't want to call it apocryphal, but a tale of an Okinawan prisoner of war. Apparently he's renowned because he got paid. He saved $200.
Wow.
He learned about the use of propane. And when he went back to Okinawa, he used the money to start a company.
Wow.
He is now in his 90s, still the owner of that hardware store. It's been quite successful.
Yeah.
So,
you need to interview him.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it wasn't great. I wouldn't have wished that on someone, but he parlayed it, and they were amazed, right? Because they expected, like, if the Japanese took you prisoner, they'd probably kill you, and that was it. But the Americans actually paid them to work.
Oh yeah, because the international law, they couldn't force them for free. Yeah, so they had to pay
them. And I know you're not Claudia.
Yeah.
Oh. Sorry, I am voice of Claudia because she's too shy.
I'm sure.
Hi, Claudia.
Hi.
She's the Okinawan.
Yeah.
What was your name?
Oh, my name's Eric.
Oh, Eric, I met you at the Okinawan Festival.
Yeah.
Nice to hear.
So we do have a couple questions, some more questions, Mary, for Ducky and Mary. So Angela asked, do you know if the daily life of POWs and internees were the same?
No, I don't think they were the same. And we don't, if the internees, the Japanese internees or incarcerated folks versus the POWs, if their life was the same.
No,
as far as we know, that the Japanese incarcerated folks were not allowed to leave. And so, there's nothing that shows counter to that.
Actually, family members could visit them.
Right. They can go in and visit, but they're not allowed to go out versus the POWs were allowed to leave to work. The Japanese incarcerees were not allowed to leave. So I don't think it was the same. We don't know enough about that. And so we're hoping if you know of descendants who can speak to that, we would really love to talk to you.
A second story of the Okinawan prisoners
Yeah.
was someone where someone changed places with him and he left for a day. But yes, he wasn't supposed to leave, but they weren't that rigorous about it either.
Man, Eric, we
Yeah,
need to talk to you.
so
I know Claudia, so we're gonna be connecting for sure.
there is the information that even their lives might not have been the same just based upon the facilities there. The American U.S. citizen side had hot water versus I think the POWs only had cold. They also had pit toilets, whereas that was different from the U.S. citizen side. And the U.S. citizen side had like a post office, a dental facility. But I think for me, there's differences in what was provided and the differences in the facilities is because, the Japanese Americans, Italian, German Americans, they were all meant to stay there indefinitely. So they had a little bit more infrastructure than the POW side. So I'm sure that led to very different lives as well. So Jamie says, in an international politics class, we talked about the Japanese occupation of Korea, and my professor said the Japanese imperial model was far less detrimental than Western imperialism, and the occupation has even economically benefited Korea. I was wondering what your thoughts on this are, even though it's not directly
Let's not cover that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's not cover that here.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I'm sure like people have different views and different opinions about that, right? And so, and I think that's why history needs to be told, and oral history needs to be collected from the communities that have lived it. And so, like Sunny, who's on here, he knows, and Ducky knows. I personally have been impacted by Japanese occupation, even though I was not alive during that time. I have relatives who were murdered, families who were, so I mean, I think it's just complex. It depends on from what lens you're looking at it. I don't think we would say that Hallyu is here because of Japanese occupation. I don't think anyone who is a scholar of Korean history or contemporary Korea would say that. So yeah, I'd be curious to see why they think that. Yeah.
So I actually have a question for you myself. So I was actually talking to somebody today and talking about the talk that you would be given. And it was posed kind of an interesting question that made me think. But so Honouliuli is a national park because it was the largest and longest used incarceration site, and it did hold the largest POWs during the time. But there were 12 other POW sites in the territory of Hawaii, 2 on the Big Island and the rest were on Oahu. And I was asked by the individual, why were there so many Koreans at Honouliuli? Versus, and how did they make the selection of who to send where for the POWs? And so why was it that Honolulu seemed to have so many Korean POWs? And I said, I didn't know, but there's a talk tonight that this question may be answered. And I also, said, I also don't know in terms of the other 12 POW camps, what makeup of those camps were. Were other camps had more Koreans, less? Overall, in terms of Koreans compared to other POWs that were sent to Hawaii in general versus just Honouliuli. So, yeah. Do you have any insights on that question that I was posed or anything? Any
We
thoughts?
have to do more research on Honolulu, because we thought that their EIS shows so there's Camp 7, Camp 8 like that, and the Koreans were Camp 7 or whatever number that was. But actually, our church minister, Reverend Lim's report says that he did the Camp 7 at Honouliuli or Camp 8 at Sand Island. It was his report was done in 1940, 45, 40, for the end of 44, 45. So actually not all 2,700 were Honouliuli. So it sort of conflicts with the general information that Korean POWs were all in Honolulu. So there are actually a lot of more work to do in the military side.
Yeah, there's a lot of verification that we're currently doing. And so there's mixed numbers. I mean, there's some other reports that show that there are more Okinawans actually POWs than there were Koreans. And so we're in the process of looking. I know on the Big Island, from what I heard from the national parks folks, when we visited there, it seemed like there were more Japanese, but I'm not sure because we didn't really dig into those archives.
Yeah.
I think
Suzanne shares in the chat. Oh, so go ahead.
Yeah. So I think, like Ducky said, we're in the process right now. Like my graduate students are right here across from me, and we're still digging through. And one of the biggest challenges here is that the military archives were sent all the way over to Maryland, and so and many of those boxes and boxes are not available digitally, and so you have to physically go there. And so that's the biggest hurdles. And we've had some grad students from Northwestern and some other scholars who kind of offered and have found a little bit, but it takes up so much time. And so I think that's biggest challenge. I think for Korea, I'm very lucky to have friends in Korea who are historians and scholars who are able to find. But I think that's the biggest challenge for us, is that having access to archives.
Yeah, great. Well, we have a few more minutes, maybe have time for one more question, if there are any questions, audio-wise or chat-wise.
I think Sunny said something.
Yes, he responded to Jamie, and it was in agreement with your comment about the perspective of the Japanese occupation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, Sunny came that. Thumbs up.
In the big, so I mean, it's an area that Suzanne, I think I've read some of your work actually that kind of talks about the numbers of POWs and numbers of people who are in the various camps. We haven't looked at the Big Island in depth, so we look forward to looking at it more closely. So thank you for that.
Great. Well, in the few minutes that are remaining, I want to extend my mahalo to both you, Mary, and Ducky, for sharing some wonderful information. It looks like we have more talks in the future based upon more work that you're doing, and you've hinted at some tantalizing conversations in the future and more information that hopefully you will be able to share with us in the future. So really looking forward to that, and welcome you both back for the continued great work that you're doing. I just want to give a plug to some other events coming up soon that people might be interested in. We do actually have some book author events this month. It's National Literacy Month. And we have a descendant whose grandfather, Japanese American, was held at Honouliuli. So she has written a children's book about the shell collection that she inherited from her grandfather, is the only way she knew her grandfather. So it's an event at the Bishop Museum, and also her poetry is part of an anthology comprised of descendants of Japanese Americans who were held in various incarceration sites. And that's on Saturday at Native Books. And next month, actually, Mary, you had thanked Jay in your last slide. So the former acting superintendent of Honouliuli actually is going to give one of our talks in October. So all that information is on the park's website, and I'll put that in the chat. But October, we're focusing on each month, a celebration of the 10th. We're focused on different themes to educate about the park. And October is focusing on the role of agriculture, past, present, and future. That has been this running consistent theme for Honouliuli in why it was created. And actually the POWs were allowed to farm there, to go back to the question of what they were allowed to do and how their lives might have been like. And then even past when the camp was closed. So we are going to have speakers related to that as well for October, and all that is on the park's website. So just a few more things to share with you, to look forward to, but definitely learned so much from you both, Mary and Ducky, and we really appreciate you sharing in the great research that you've done so far, and look forward to hearing more. And for everybody else, thank you for joining us on this lovely Tuesday evening, especially those of you from New Orleans and Utah. It's very late for you. So thank you very much. We appreciate it, and we hope you have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.